As many of you know, on the ACT, I want you to answer every single question. So if the proctor says you have 2 minutes left, I want you to set aside time to put an answer on every single bubble in the whole Scantron sheet. They only count the ones you get right, so that's the blessing about the ACT. If you have trouble finishing any of your sections, you will get a better score if you go more carefully through 3/4 of each section instead of rushing through the whole section and getting half of them wrong. I want to break it down by section here on how to adjust your time if you have trouble finishing each of the sections in time. So for the English, the grammar, it's the first section. There are 75 questions. If you can get through 60 of them, doesn't have to be the first 60, but just try getting 60 of them right, you will get a great score. Now, this could be where you need to skip some of the longer questions. Longer questions tend to be the order of sentences. They might have you rearrange the order of sentence 1 through 5 in a paragraph. That takes a while, so leave that one out. There's another one. It's usually the last question of every mini passage in the grammar. It'll say, has the writer fulfilled his goal in talking about the topic of the early stages of Tejano music, and it's one of its main singers. And if you've kind of forgotten what the theme was, this is a good one to skip and move on to those short ones that just ask you about punctuation, a comma, a semicolon, or an apostrophe. With math, you have 60 problems. So instead of rushing through and missing half of them by doing careless errors, instead make it a goal for doing 45 of the math problems well. Now, the first 30 math problems are more basic in general. I would say that's more 9th and 10th grade math. So a lot of people find that that's the easier part of the math section. However, many of you are going through a lot of the math that's the numbers 45 to 60. You're doing that in math class at school right now. So those are much easier for you. So I can't really say which 45 to do. So maybe it's the shorter ones. Skip the word problems, the ones that take too long. Every question's worth a point, so get your points as many as you can. With reading, you have 4 passages, each with 10 questions. So instead of rushing through, it's very hard to finish 4 passages with 40 questions in 35 minutes. So instead, go through 3 of the passages more carefully. Maybe it's your favorite 3, maybe it's the 3 that have the shortest questions. You probably know that it starts with prose, goes into social science, then into humanities, and then into natural science. So if you favor the sciences, make sure you do the 2 sciences plus 1. Or if you think prose, it's about a story about a family, and there's not usually questions that say in lines 7 to 10. So if you have trouble retaining that information about a story, skip the first one, skip prose, and go to the other 3. Basically, do well on 3 of them so that you can get closer to 30 points doing that. If you rush through 4 passages, getting 5 in each of the passages wrong, that's 20 against you. So a 30 out of 40 is a much better score than a 20 out of 40 for reading. Similarly, science is 35-minute section as well. So you have 7 experiments to do in 35 minutes, which you all know is a 5-minute experiment. A lot of these experiments have a lot to read. They have tables and graphs and keys and charts, often take up 2 pages. That's the hard part about ACT Science, is finishing in time. It's not usually the questions. The questions are pretty basic, and they have you look at the table or look at the chart and see what's increasing under what temperature, what eggs hatch, that sort of thing. So the questions themselves and the tables are not that difficult to understand. It's just getting to all 40 questions. So for science, if you really have trouble finishing in time, do 5 of them carefully and leave 2 out. A much better score will be if you can get through 6 of the 7 experiments well. A lot of my students like to skip there's one experiment that doesn't have tables or graphs, so it's a lot more reading. So that tends to be what a lot of my students will do, 6 experiments very well and skip that one without graphs. Now, of course, you're going to get the best score if you can get through 7 and do them all pretty well. But if you have a lot of trouble finishing in time, maybe you could have used 8 more minutes, then instead go carefully through 3/4 of that science section. The essay, not everyone takes it, but I would advise taking it, the test with the writing portion, because most colleges in the nation do ask for that writing portion. So if you are taking the essay, it's a 30-minute essay. The goal is to write at least 4 paragraphs. That is an introduction with 2 body paragraphs and a conclusion. So if you can do that, that's fabulous. You'll usually get about an 8 out of 12 for doing 4 solid paragraphs. If you have time to do 5 paragraphs, an intro and 3 body paragraphs, or an intro with 2 body paragraphs, 3 body paragraphs supporting your argument, or an intro with 2 body paragraphs supporting your argument and 1 counterpoint, and then a conclusion, that's ideal. That's where you get your double-digit score. Now, if you are looking at the clock and you're running out of time, it's much more important to finish that essay with a conclusion than it is to think about another example. The ACT graders are going to take off more points if you don't allot time enough to finish an essay by concluding it. So make sure, if you're losing time, make sure you have time for the conclusion more than another example.